I have a theory, a question, and so I'll share it with you. It has some truth in my life. It may have a lot of truth, I'm not quite sure. But I wanted to articulate it and look at it as an equation. And then you can test the equation in your own reality and see, is it useful? Is it not? If it's useful, use it. Is it true? Is it not? I would say use it if it's useful, even if it seems untrue. Don't use it if it's not useful, even if it seems true. But if it's true and useful, then it's a good model, right? And reality is always more complex than the model. So the model is an approximation. It's a symbol for a more complex underlying reality. Now, one of the most important equations is human attachment to identity. People will willingly die and will willingly kill their children, their family, in order to hold on to identity. If you think of a lot of what war is about, it's about saying, no, I don't want you invading the country and imposing your way of doing things. I want to continue doing my way of doing things. And if we have to send 10,000 children off to die in order to protect my way of doing things, because frankly, if people didn't resist in war, I mean, imagine a dynamic like this where someone spends all this time and money and invades and, comes up with their guns and all that and says, give me your country. Have it, okay. Then give me your money. Okay, here it is. Work for me or do this. It starts to be an uncomfortable identity. It just takes a sociopath. But in many cases, I think there wouldn't be wars if there wasn't a resistance to the idea, right? The aggressor usually has something that they believe in, some identity. Now, it gets complicated, and this is why I say that I think there's truth in here, and I think it's useful, but, I'm already, questioning this first hypothesis because Hitler wanted to get rid of Jews. I'm not sure if that was the main goal, so maybe it's not. Maybe there would still be wars. But the war is definitely fought on both sides to maintain the right to choose one's identity, one's pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And some identities are more fragile than other identities. For example, the Native American identity of roaming free across land, that pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being is destroyed the moment borders and lines are defined on land, right? It's no longer a viable pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. The idea that nobody owns the land, that we all emerge out of the land, is an idea in an identity that collapses the moment the land is cut into square feet and sold by the square foot. Right? The identity collapses as another identity is imposed on it. There's a correlation between identity, which is an I, that's you and me, I, something that distinguishes itself from the ecology out of which it emerges, an I, or ego, and identity, a pattern of what? A pattern of thinking that leads to a pattern of feeling, that leads to a pattern of speaking, that leads to a pattern of doing, which leads to a pattern of being, right? So if you think a certain thought, first of all, you always think in a certain language. If you have no words, no language, you can't compose a thought. So you think, and now you automatically speak in the language that you think, right? So and what you speak is what you think. Now, you may think one thing and then think that's not a good idea to say that. And what would be a good idea to say this would be a good idea. And so you say that. You tell a lie, right? Because you thought it was a good idea to tell a lie. So you have this emergence of a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. As we test out different thoughts in an ecology, in an environment. And some of the thoughts pay off handsomely. Now that's a habit, by the way. Sayings, pays off handsomely. What does it mean? It's just a habit, right? Pays, right? Is there any money? Not necessarily. Does something disappear, go off? Off where, right? No. Doesn't, no, nothing goes off, and handsomely, right? What does that mean, right? It's just a habit. It's just a composition. So what a habit does is it offers protection from the unknown. And so the first part of the equation is we have identity, fear of the unknown. The attachment to our identity is equivalent to our fear of the unknown. Our fear of the unknown is equivalent to our attachment to our identity. The fear of the unknown is the greatest human fear. Horror is often exposure to something so big and so unknown in a frame of fear, like it would dissolve, it would consume me, my identity, my little pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being would be shattered, would be warped, would be obliterated. The horror, right, of an I trying to hold on to a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being in the face of something big. It's not even, is it good, is it bad? They talk about the terror, the fear of God, right? That which is more than you. It's too big, it's too complex, it's too vast, right? My little pattern starts to fall apart and I lose myself. I risk facing oblivion, death. The pattern that I attach myself to is shattered, and so the I doesn't know who it is. So this is the greatest source of all motivation. Fear of the unknown, attachment to identity, to a pattern. What does the pattern offer? It offers safety in its protection from the unknown. A routine of eating, a routine of doing, a routine of thinking. Now, the identity, the pattern of thinking, right, can be looked at as a pixelated screen. Right, of lots and lots of bits of code. We can look at our identity, our pattern, as the code that is written. Right? So there's all of this code in our thoughts. And the code has complexity, diversity, tension in a couple of areas. First of all, there are multiple voices. When we have a conversation with ourselves, right, there are multiple voices. From what? Different points of view, right? This would be so amazing and freeing, says the voice that wants amazing and free. But it would lose money, says the voice that values money. But it would be good for mom, says the voice that values tradition or values the relationship with mom. But, right, so there's all these different values, and their intention, and we hear them as voices, parts of ourself, that we have a converse, right? A conversation, a back and forth. If we don't, right, then, you know, we just do the first thought that comes into our head, whether or not it's a, you know, effective thought or not. If there's only one thought, we cling to it, we do that. But what if that thought is go commit suicide or whatever? And then there's usually a thought that says, really, is that the only thought? And, you know, then we're back into more than one thought. Now, the other thing that I think is important to understand is that the pattern of thinking evolves with age, right? So it may be 1 year old, 2 years old, we see Santa Claus. We don't know how to talk, but we see Santa Claus, or we hear about them, and then we are told about Santa Claus, and then we're excited about Santa Claus, but, you know, don't give me a black coal, give me some presents. Then we feel puzzled, like, really, is Santa Claus, or is this just a big joke? Then we feel cynical about Santa Claus. Then, you know, then we grow up and say, well, it's a nice tradition. Then we get excited, like we're going to be Santa Claus for our kids. But then it's like, oh, we don't have any money this summer. So like, why? Who the fuck is Santa Claus? Why do Santa Claus make me have to buy all these things we don't have money for, right? And so there's all this stuff, you know, around each thought that or each, you know, each cultural thought. This thought of Santa Claus then has all these layers of response to, right? And just as a tree does not vacuum out, like when a tree grows a new layer and gets older and grows a new layer and gets older, when an onion grows a new layer and gets older, just as a tree adds more layers but doesn't get rid of the layers inside. The layers inside remain. They're just not the main focus. So our identity, our pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being gets bigger. It expands, but it still contains the memory. Now, a memory is simply a pattern we can go back to. So when we regress, we go back to an earlier pattern. Like when we have a traumatic shock, we may curl up in a fetal position because that was the last position we were very safe in inside the womb. So we want to go back to that memory to protect me from the shocking events that are happening today. I want to remember the womb. I don't want to remember the horrible bomb that just went off. And so we regress to an earlier pattern, which means it's still in there. The memory of the earlier patterns are still there. So our thoughts are not always organized. They're not always coherent. One says you should be a courageous person, but another one says, but I don't want to get killed for my beliefs. Maybe we shouldn't be a courageous person, right? And then another thought says, well, what about this and this? And there's contradictory code. There's a thought, oh, today is a great day. I love my life. But over here, there's, life is a bitch, right? And over here, there's, you just got to get on with life. You just got to get on with it, right? And another one says, life should be exciting. It should be over here. And it's like, it's so pressure. Why do I have to always make life exciting? I just want to relax, right? So there's all these tensions around in our thoughts, around each area. And those tensions, they have a vote, right? Is life overall good or bad, right? Well, it is exciting, so the idea that life should be exciting, that gets a check mark. Is it profitable? The idea that you should be a winner and winners are profitable. So if you're profitable, then that gets a check mark. But, what about helping people? Well, we're not going to look at that. We're just not going to look at that. But it doesn't really get a check mark. We're not really helping people. We're doing this, and I don't really want to look at that. So there's also a shadow part, right? The dark side of the moon, right? Wherever we're putting our attention, right? On the front of this globe here, right? That's what we're paying attention to, but there's also the shadow side. Those are the things that we think sometimes, or we think but don't know if it's a good idea to think, or don't want anyone else to see that we're thinking, or don't want to know that we're thinking, right? We may be thinking, I'm never going to pay this loan back. But I don't want to know that. I want to see my virtuous side and say, I'm going to pay you back. I'm never going to pay this loan. How am I going to ever pay that loan back? Shut up. Go around the back, right? I'm going to pay the loan back. I'm going to focus on that. We put all the data, all the equation, how many loans I haven't paid back in the background, on the other side, in the shadow. And so, this very complex identity pattern of thinking is projected. It's projected out onto a screen. And the screen has, different dimensions. Okay, so the screen has different dimensions. Your health, right? Health, money, sex, emotions, right? Your reality, physical things around you, people. Your screen has different categories. So, you have something like your house. Now, you could have a cluttered mind, and then it will be reflected in a cluttered house. But if it isn't in a cluttered house, so here's the hypothesis. The hypothesis is that all of these different layers, from the inner 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, that all the different layers of our thoughts have a certain amount of impact and are stored in memory, in our body, in our mind. They have a certain amount of impact. And that all of the code, life is great, life's a bitch, I don't know about life, life is overwhelming, just go away, that the whole bit of code also has an impact. That when energy and awareness flows through this image onto the screen of our lives, be that the physical screen of our physical body or the emotional screen, or the screen of our sex life, or the screen of our financial life, or the screen, there's different areas of our screen, just like there's different areas of the code. But that everything that we find inside, we can see somewhere on the screen outside. And that if we do not, right, we see it in our thoughts, right? So sometimes we can, this awareness, right? We can be aware of one of two things. We can be aware of thinking something and then start editing the code up here. Or we can be aware of it out on the screen of reality. So, for example, we might say that the world is very corrupt, and we might see it in our politics, right? That, over here, we look at our politicians and we have a political screen and we see, just so corrupt. Or we could come up to this area up here and see, wow, is this code corrupt, right? What does corruption mean? It just means that it's not integrated, right? A corrupt code, like the code that is supposed to process a credit card, you put it in and the money goes out. But a corrupt code that processes a credit card, maybe one time it doesn't read the card. Another time it sends the wrong amount. And so it's a corrupt credit card reader. It's corrupted. It's not consistently doing one thing. But if we look at the corruption in our minds, we can see that our minds are not doing the same thing either, right? I really want a relationship. Relationship is the most important thing to me. Okay, so of all the amount of money you have and all the amount of time you have and all the resources you have access to, are you spending the majority of it on your relationship? No. Are you spending 90% of it on your relationship? No. You're spending more than 50% on it? No. So how much money are you spending a month to have or invest in this relationship? Well, some it's $100. So you make, $5,000 a month and you're spending $100, right? 1/50th. But you say this is the most important thing in the world, but then you do the exact opposite. You pretend that it's the 50th most important thing in the world. And then you don't acknowledge the corruption. Well, that's because nobody's going to date me unless I have a house. So I've got to get a house, and then I've got to do this. And then I've got to spend all this time working so I can pay for the house. But right, why not just go to a place where houses cost $1,000, and then you would be able to spend 90% of your energy, being interested in relationship. I don't want to do that because why, right? So we all have corrupt minds. Now we can either look with our awareness when we see something out on the screen here that we don't like. God, that liar, right? That liar. Just look at him, lying through his teeth, right? Just son of a bitch, right? We can have, right, the people in our life, right? So because a good projector projects the script, the film that's inside, onto the screen that's outside. A bad projector doesn't, right? You put a movie in a bad projector and it sends out nothing, right? That's a bad projector. That's a corrupt projector. But a good projector, if you put in a bad movie, it plays a bad movie. If you put in a good movie, it plays a good movie accurately, right? If the editor cut this scene out, then the screen cuts it out, right? The projector cuts it out, right? And so it plays what's coded or coated into the film. So that's a good projector, right? And our identity, our pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, is a great projector, right? It interacts with the screen in our reality, and we can find our thoughts, our feelings, etc. out there. And we could, of course, change our identity. We could change our pattern of thinking. But if we change our pattern of thinking, we will also change what shows up on the screen. If we think differently and then speak differently and then feel differently and then behave differently and then be in a different way, then the whole world changes, right? The screen changes. What happens out there shifts. And it shifts because, right, the code that the light is going through is different, right? Because we changed our thoughts. Now, our identity and our memory is quite big, right? And so when we start a new thought, we create a new outer rim, a new level of moment in time. And if you've ever seen watercolors, if you've ever seen veils or watercolors, imagine putting a lemon-colored tissue paper in front of a black tissue paper. You still see a lot of the black, and the black still has impact, but so does the lemon, right? So if you keep putting new layers of lemon in front of the light, the light will move in a lemon direction, but it would move in a lemon direction much more if we went back and changed the black tissue paper to lemon tissue paper as well, right? But what we see is the light coming through all of these different layers, these different memories. Now this gets into another thought where you can edit the past, right? You may be in a movie at a different point, and the past is stored in memory, right? And memory is created by priorities. What I mean by that is when you were being spanked as a child, your priority was probably thinking about how unfair it was, or I hope she doesn't kill me, or whatever the priority was, or I'm going to get that bitch later, right? Something, it's probably prioritized around that. But at the same time that you were being spanked, your body was aware. The senses were aware that maybe a flower was blooming over there. Someone else was trying to do something nice. Your older sibling was saying, "Hey, Mom, cut it out," right? It wasn't his fault, right? So someone was trying to do something nice for you. There was a flower. The air was breathable, right? Maybe it was cleaner than it was today, or but there's a lot of things going on in any moment. But memory remembers, prioritizes a small band of the past that seems most relevant. It's so unfair, I get punished. That's what got signified. Like, it's so unfair. I'm punished for my older siblings' lies, well, whatever it is. So that becomes the memory of that moment, right? So one perfectly rational way to edit memory, like if that's filled with rage and hate and violence, that black tissue paper, for example, or that red tissue paper, whatever, you could go back and say, that did happen. It's not happening at the moment. But what also happened is I survived. I survived that. And what else that happened is the air was clean back there. So I could focus on the fact that in my memory, there's always been clean air. I can always count on life to give me clean air. And that could be the main memory. I can't change it. Why not, right? Well, that was the main memory, right? Well, that was using what's called the default mode network in the brain to memorize the things that most of the people around you are focusing on memorizing, right? You're given a cultural download, and that's what you were given to focus on, right? Based on what other people thought and talked about, right? But if you're an editor in a film and you want to show something new, you don't have to show the same film that everyone else is showing. You can do a close-up on a leaf and say, I think that deserves some focus and attention, and we're going to zoom out on this bit over here. That's where you become an artist in the creation of a new reality that is chosen as opposed to the reality that you were given. You're given an identity, a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. You copy a lot of it. You're given it. You're told, do this, or you don't belong. You're given an identity that you attach yourself to, but you could face some of that fear of the unknown, that terror of overwhelm, and in the space of letting certain things go, then find new things to focus on in the identity. You can find something else, but we will tend to find, right, in our memories, in our past, or in our futures, right? Because we could also focus all our time seething with hatred at the corruption of politicians. That politician was corrupt, that one was. So I'm sure the next one will be corrupt as well. So I'm seething with hatred for politicians. And, right, and so that could be, the main future, right? Because it's not just, we have control not just of the past, but the future is filled, our future, meaning our awareness is filled with our hatred for corrupt politicians. They're going to deflate my currency and not pay my medical bills. And that is the future, but it is our future, right? It's of all the different things, like in the future, the stars will be shining, but we're not paying attention to that. With the future, the air will still be there, but we're not paying attention to that. The future, there will be mountains in the future, but I'm not paying attention to that. I'm paying attention to this narrow band that consumes all of my awareness, right? And so in that sense, what's projected into the future, when I think about the future, is what I'm focusing on. And what I'm projecting into the past is what I'm focusing on. And of course, there's all kinds of interesting things going on in the present. Nuclear fusion and unlimited free energy is taking some steps forward. Reforestation of deserts is taking some steps forward. The cost of electricity is going down. The cost of nice prefabricated kit homes is going down over conventional home building. There's more information being created than has ever been created before. That's all happening. But there's also deforestation, right? Corruption, lies, this, right? That's all happening too. Now, our little eye cannot play on one movie the whole narration of all that is, right? You can't, there's no VHS player, there's no DVD player, there's no projector that can play all of the movies that have ever played, past, present, and future, at the same time. Like you could load up, 5 or 6 bits of film and run it through the light, and it would be a whole dizzying mishmash. And so we organize all of that possibility, probability that's out there, and we create themes, right? The theme of our film. Oh, right, corruption again, this and that, right? And if we don't create our own themes, we default to the themes of our cult, right? Our culture has its own sense of what you should and shouldn't be thinking and why, and what is important and that's not important, right? That's just joy, right? Just get rid of that. Let's do this. And so we're going to focus on the things that we focus on, for the reasons that we focus on it, right? And we're also, we do have the choice to acknowledge our own insanity or to project that insanity out. In each case, we can turn our awareness onto the script or onto the screen, right? Now, most of us are not aware that we're writing the script. We think we're watching the script, right? And it starts out that we were given a script. This is the way life is. There it is. See? They can point to the details. You didn't see it before, but then look, wow, that politician is corrupt. Wow, they are planting trees in the desert. Wow, this and this, right? And the movie has a mood, has a broader theme. Usually it's not things are very complicated and beautiful and terrible. Usually the theme that we're given in a family system, in a cult or culture to download is a theme, that has some consistency. They don't say, there's all this amazing stuff, you figure it out. Usually there's a theme that says, this is a horror movie. Right? Dun, 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 dun. There's this, see that horrible thing, just wait, that horrible thing's gonna happen over there. Now jump over here, look at that one, that's horrible. That is horrible. Now look, that is about to happen. See, there it just happened. It's a horrible reality, right? So there's horror movies, there's comedies. People don't generally want to see horror movies in their romantic comedy. I want to see a romantic comedy. So they go to a romantic comedy. And in the middle of the romantic comedy, Jaws doesn't come out of the nice picnic and eat them. I wanted a romantic comedy. That's not a romantic comedy. Get that shark out of there, right? So people also decide whether they acknowledge it or not. I want to be aware of good things. I want to be aware of good things. I want a positive life. Oh, there's a positive thing. That's a positive person. This and that So there's my script, like this happened well, I arrived to work on time, I have a positive life, right? Someone else wants to have a negative life, right? And so they say, oh, well, who cares? People are all arriving on time to the machine, right? That's going to suck out their brains and eat them and spit them out in old age without a pension, right? And they're all positive that, they arrive to work on time, like they're slaves to the machine, right? And so they see the same bit of information, but it's a different script, right? And so you have to dim the colors a bit, right? And the office has to be shown as rectangular, repeating skyscrapers. You can't show people arriving to work at home offices where they're all colorful and interesting, because it kind of ruins the theme, right? The theme is the machine, right? The soul-sucking machine that is work and culture and government. So you have to tell a story, right? You have to delete all kinds of data and emphasize all other kinds of data. But my hypothesis is this, that we can be completely unaware of the code in our thoughts, in our thinking, as well as all the feelings and attitudes and beliefs and sensations and words that come out of that. We can be very unconscious of that, and we can just watch the movie, right? Just wow. We can watch the movie. It's out there. It's nothing to do with me, right? And it is out there, right? Those are real people, right? Going around doing that, and those are real, right? My body does feel like this. I feel terrible. Right? Those are real things. My body feels terrible. That's the screen, right? And I don't have any money, or I have lots of money, or whatever the script calls for, right? So I can focus on the screen. And so, and that's where my awareness can be. And then I can, as a character in the screen, like I can try and move my body around and influence within the body as a character in the movie. I can interact with, like, there's that scary person over there, I can walk this way, right? And in that sense, there's a certain amount of cause and effect, and the mind organizes it so that it all makes sense. And so I can learn from within the script. I can be an actor in the script that is largely invisible, and I can learn within that script, like avoid that person has a bad day, and go over here and do this, and I can work with the script to make it better from within the movie as a character, right? Where I have no control on what's going on in the screen. I just, for some reason, there's a nice man. I never want to have sex with nice man. I want to have sex with sociopaths, but I don't know why. It's just the way it is. So I'm going to avoid sex, because I'm tired of having sex with sociopaths. That's working with the script within the screen, right? For some reason, people I feel aroused by all turn out to be sociopathic, so I just will turn off my sex, right? That's working with it within the screen. I just won't be sexual, because who wants to have sex with sociopaths, right? Or I could say, I like having sex with sociopaths, I guess I'm crazy, right? So you can work with it within the screen in a variety of ways. You can be aware of it. It's like, has nothing to do with me. It's like, it's all these people doing all these things. Now, the other possibility, and within the screen, there's cause and effect, right? This happened, so then we felt this way, that happened, whatever. But outside of the screen, there's an awareness, there's a sense of self, right? There's a sense of self, there's all this stuff that's kind of just happening, but there's also this presence around us that is non-linear, that is transcendent. And that self is another way to change things. It's like, I shouldn't be feeling good. I should be feeling hatred and horrible because I thought that and I felt that and I said this and these people did these things. And it seems like feeling hostile and terrible is the right thing to feel and the logical thing to feel. Like, what do you expect? You raped my child, you did this, I believe I'm a bad person, I'm a bad father. What am I going to feel? Well, it's perfectly obvious. I'm going to feel hostile, hatred, want revenge. These are perfectly predictable alchemies, right? You pour acid on concrete, it melts. What do you expect, right? You hit a ball, it bounces forward. So that's, the cause and effect type of working with the script, right? These are the things. If you hit this thing with a baseball bat, it will break, right? You hit it, so it broke, right? And that's the way you change reality is with that. Now, the other way of changing reality is by becoming aware of the witness, the self, that is around this whole bit of movie-making machinery. And being more aware of the code, right? The thought. Now the awareness is shifting. Like, I feel scared because that man is a scary man. He's right over there, right? It shifts and you go in awareness, I'm afraid of power. I believe that all powerful people want to hurt me. I believe I deserve to be hurt. And that's a powerful person, so he becomes a scary person. And maybe if I project that onto him enough and behave like, maybe he'll even hit me, right? Because it seems to be what's called for in the script. But if the awareness goes inside to the code, then I could say, I'm going to change that script, right? I'm going to change that bit of code. All power is not bad. Total power does not corrupt, absolutely, right? Certain kinds of power with certain kinds of people and certain kinds of roles and certain types of things may express themselves sociopathically in this way, but all power, no, not all power, but right? And so we start fiddling with the code, opening up a little bit to say, like, does it have to end the same way that it always ends? Well, maybe if I think this thought and do this thing, maybe it doesn't have to end in that way, right? And if I'm aware of the film that's being projected, the script that I'm transmitting and projecting, if I'm aware of that, and I'm thinking and feeling and speaking and doing and being a different script, then there will be a change. Maybe not instantly, because the characters in my old film, like they were hired for a horror film. What do you mean you're grateful to me for this? I thought I was supposed to kill you, right? So, the actors need to be given a new script, right? And the mind does not like these sudden irrational transitions, so it may say you have to move, right? The audience isn't going to believe all these horrible people just changed into nice people, right? Forget it, right? So you have to move to a new town, right? But believe me, there's someone in that town that thinks that all those people are horrible, right? They could move to your town and believe that everyone isn't horrible, right? Because they're given a new script and a new role, right? And they start playing that script. So it's so the awareness can be on the screen or it can be on the script and what's being projected, or both, right? So that's one choice. In order to be more aware of the script, There has to be enough room to believe that we have some influence on reality. And you can do a scientific experiment, right? You interact with 10 people doing your script, your thoughts, your feelings, but then have someone completely different from you interact with the same people and see what emerges in that relationship. You may say they're hypocrites, they're this and that and the other, but when they interact with these other people, there's more integrity. Well, they're really, really a hypocrite. They're just pretending that, right? While the other person might say, well, they really have integrity. They're, that person's just digging and, trying to find all this stuff and manufacturing it, right? And so people are different based on who they are with, right? Even if someone rapes someone, they don't rape every single person every single time. Right? So they pick a very particular person. Maybe it's once a Friday they rape someone, or once a year, right? Or once every 3 years, right? Every 3 years, they have these feelings, whatever. They feel like raping someone, and they look around for a certain person that will fit into their script of being raped, right? And they don't, you can see this, right? You can see certain dynamics of certain women can go into a gang situation and diffuse the situation, build rapport, help those gang members remember their self, connect with who they are. And not only does a rape not happen, but they go home and reflect on themselves, right? You have someone else come into the same situation and they get raped and killed, right? And there was no waking up or acknowledgement. They were deep in their terror and their script, right? And the script might have been completely unconscious. Like I had no idea, right? Walking in a blind place, doing this, I had no idea that was walking into a rape scene because I'm not aware of the script. Right? And our culture does not teach anyone about script, so none of us are aware of the script. But there is a script, whether it's given to us by the culture. For example, our culture demands that a certain number of people be raped every year in the script. And you see it on the screen, right? X number of people got raped this year. This was the way that our culture demands that we do. We don't talk about our feelings. We don't teach sexuality. We don't do this. We don't do that. And lo and behold, right, for no reason, right, people just get raped. Right? But there are other cultures where people do not get raped, or do not get raped as much per 1,000 people, right? But they do different scripts, right? They do different scripts. Right? And so the script is inside of us, either because it was given to us, shoved down our throat, or because we created it with what was given and shoved down our throats, and it's there. What I have been noticing is that, that there's a fair amount of flexibility. For example, I know that there's a deep part of my script that says that I deserve to be punished. And I've had memories of being 1 and 2-year-old and being terrified of being hit by my parents, being terrified of being shamed and hit and ostracized and shouted at. And that little kid believes I'm bad, I deserve to be punished. Now, that's given to him, right? A 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, 2 giants are saying, you're bad. You're a bad kid. You deserve this. I don't even want to hit you, but it hurts me more than you, but got to do it, right? Because it's all your fault, right? Now, imagine the stupidity, right? Two giants supposedly knowing what they're doing, right? Blaming a 2-year-old for the miseries of their lives. Right? But that terror is in my body. It's very loud it's a very loud color here. And then the culture has told me, don't talk about that. That's negative. Avoid that, right? Let's look at the other things. But that 1 and 2-year-old takes it on, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. Now, that terror and fear in that script of that 2-year-old, because nobody else wants to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it either. I'd rather buy a new car or do something today. Like, I've become the giant that doesn't want to deal with that terror in my body, right? So, right, I'm in a traumatically illiterate culture, right, where we do this to children, but nobody knows what to do about it. So it's there, right? That's in my script. It's in my projection. I look out at the world, who's going to hit me, who's going to do this. The 1 and 2-year-old is still expecting that. That's softened by older years, like, hey, nobody's hit us in years. Literally, nobody's hit us in years, right? But there's still the anticipation, there's still the terror. Now, that thought, I'm bad, I deserve punishment, that's in the script, right? Some part of me is intensely resonating with that. And so it has to show up on the screen. The rule is, and this is the hypothesis, that anything that's inside has to show up in some way on the outer screen. Now, the area that it can show up sexually, it can show up in your physical health, it can show up in people trying to hit you, it can show up in all kinds of different things. So for me, it shows up in sociopathic movies, right? I see those movies and it's like, yeah, all those horrible people trying to hit you. It shows up in my legs. They're tight. My legs are always tight, waiting to trying to get some sense of control in that helpless situation. I'm going to be so tight that I can stand it. I can bear it if I'm just tight enough. I tense. You always tense yourself when you're waiting for pain, right? So my legs carry decades of that tension. So they're going numb, right? So that's happened back there. It's happening here. That's the screen of my legs. Right? Now it also makes me more anxious and more, right? And so I'm more anxious and fear-based in my relationships. So people relating to me do so to that anxious, fearful part. Some of them avoid it. Some of them judge it. Some of them get nervous around it. Some of them say, oh, he must be scared of me. Let's leave him alone, right? So people respond to that in different ways. But what I have noticed is that the fear of the unknown and being out of control is so strong that the identity, the pattern of thought, is clung to desperately as a lifesaver protecting. This says, as long as you keep doing this and keep saying this, you will not be in unknown territory. You will be in the territory of your family, the familiar territory. And sometimes I can go to the witness out here and wake up to myself. This is just a movie, right? This is a script, right? If you change the script over here, things start happening differently, right? But going to sleep into the film, oh, it's happening to me. Look, it's doing this, it's doing that, right? That is also, it's our cultural mode, default mode. It's our family default mode. It's my default mode is to fall asleep and wait for things out there. So this is the hypothesis, I guess, in short, that We are given a code that we have some degree of awareness of as we are raised in a culture. That code evolves over time, that it gets projected out into some facet of our reality. And the thing that I'm fascinated with is that because I've done a lot of editing of the screen, where I've moved things around in the screen, like this gets projected onto the screen. And for example, I can lose lots of money and have great health and still be consistent with the script that I don't deserve a great life. I can be all alone and have lots of money and still be consistent with the script that I don't deserve to have a great life. Like my hypothesis is that every single thought, every single belief, every bit of code that's in the film up here will show up somewhere. Let's say you feel you're undeserving. Well, an easy way to solve that is you have nothing. Okay, you're undeserving, you have nothing. But you can actually figure out within the script and within reality how to be willing to have all kinds of luxuries while still having that feeling, right? That I deserve nothing, right? But it doesn't feel enjoyable. It's called imposter syndrome, whatever, right? So if the code is up here, it will show up somewhere. So I don't think it matters. Like if we have the code that I don't deserve, I don't think it matters to the way this mechanism works, whether we have lots of money and feel like shit, or whether we have lots of money and have no health. That all that matters is that within the code of the script, there is a strong theme that says, I don't deserve to feel good. And so I can say I feel good with nothing. That would be all right. Like to have a terrible reality, but still have a positive attitude. I've had that, right? I have nothing. I'm making very little. I have very few options, but I feel great, right? Or I've had where I have it all, but for some reason I feel worse, right? Because what isn't allowed in a film, like if you're trying to project a bit of code, what isn't allowed is to type in that code, right? My life is I don't deserve, and then to have fabulous sex, fabulous money, and feel great about it. Like I can have all that and feel like I'm a criminal. I shouldn't have this, right? That's fine. Because then the reality is up, but I'm not enjoying it at all. So I'm still not cheating, right? Because I'm not enjoying it. Or I'm enjoying it, but I have nothing to enjoy, right? I can just go off into ecstatic, dissociative bliss. But, everything's falling apart. I'm dying, the bank account is bankrupt, etc. But, hey, I've got a positive attitude about it. Or I can have it all and have a paranoid attitude. When's it going to drop? Right. So in some way, each bit of this code shows up in one of these screens, in our feelings, in our body, our health, our sex life, our bank account. It has to show up somewhere. And the only way to change so that it wouldn't show up at all, the unworthiness or whatever, would be to go back and maybe spend some time with that, 1 and 2 year old, editing the film, right? To bring in a good friend, to talk to him. Children aren't rational at that point. They blame themselves for everything, so you just have to hold them. So then maybe it's not quite so scary, right? And so then maybe the thought is I'm not bad. So then the thought is I don't deserve punishment all the time, right? But keep in mind, and this is where I think, this equation is important to understand, is that every time we change who we are, we change the entire world with us. And our deepest fear is of the unknown. And so I think this is where the attention needs to be. It's not that we can't rationally follow along this. I know all of this. I've known all this for decades. But I haven't respected just how much terror there is. I don't want to change. It's like I desperately want to change, but I don't want to face the unknown. I don't want to be in that uncertain territory where I have no idea what's going to happen next because I don't have those memories, right? I have the memories that come out of the old identity, the old pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. So the things that are significant to me about this hypothesis at the present time are, first of all, the terror of the unknown that clings to the past the way it was, rather than saying, gee, that was miserable and painful, let's let go of that and rewrite the script. Right? So that's one thing. Clinging to the future the way it was, projecting the past on the future, like it's got to be that way because otherwise I don't know who I am. Right? So I find that dynamic to be of interest, and I don't see anyone talking about it. There's lots of create your own reality themes by Lazarus and other philosophers and stuff, but there's not a lot of connection between identity as a protection of our fear of the unknown and this phenomena that people will often willingly die rather than change their identity. The other thing that isn't talked about, although it's talked about a lot more in Buddhism, is this witness and self-presence. That allows certain things to transcend. You know, that we can identify and meet ourself in this process in a way that lets light in and lets editing happen that doesn't have to be by cause and effect. Because if we're in the scripts we like are logical scripts, right? Nobody likes a script where somebody slept with their friend's wife and then the person is grateful. That doesn't make any sense. That was a cruel act, so it should have had a damaging effect. What do you mean they're grateful? That makes no sense. Rewrite that script, right? So within the logic of a script, certain things are supposed to, you have to change the outer reality. If they would teach better school, right? Imagine a school system that taught about trauma and how to prevent trauma and did this, and then the kids taught their parents, and then the family would change, right? Because that's a logical chain of events. And then we're stuck, we're miserable, we're screwed, there's nothing we can do about it because these people aren't changing their script, right? They're over there, what are we going to do with them? So within the screen, like you can work on those types of things where you try and convince the other actors to work with stuff in some kind of dynamic. But out here in witness or self-consciousness, you don't need that logic. You can just decide, I'm going to feel joy for no reason, right? The self-joy, the transcendent joy has no reason. There's nothing to do with anything good or bad going on in your life. It's just a choice to feel. It's not even a choice, right? Because it transcends the identity. You're aware of the larger self, the presence that's there. And that is confronting the unknown, right? Because the self is outside the set. It's confronting the unknown. It's confronting our fear of the unknown. The self is not afraid of the unknown. The self is in the unknown of our culture, of our family. Culture doesn't know the self. The self knows the culture is within the self. But so that transcendent possibility is a way to shift the awareness from the script to the screen to the one who is present, who is watching the screen and watching the script, right? To the one enjoying the movie rather than the screen and the characters in the screen, or the script, the one who creates it, right? That self, that awareness is bigger. It's bigger. It's outside of the set. And so it allows a certain illogical transcendent state. Feeling good for no particular reason. I feel it right now. And that's also very, very interesting to me right now, right? Because identifying as a character in the set and fear of the unknown, there's a lot of resistance to change. But transcendence, being aware of the self, there's nothing to change. It's just an awareness that shifts from script or the screen to the one who is creating, the one who is watching, the one that is there after the play is over, after the identity has dissolved. The self remains as a transcendent or eternal now. It's just present. So I'm curious, do you relate to any of it? How? Does it serve a useful function? Take care.